We're going to start with the Artificer official class review from Eberron Rising from the Last War. I'm going to keep this short and sweet for y'all. We're actually going to talk about the mechanical differences and how it actually plays in the game. So, as I mentioned, this is the first official new core class that's ever been released for D&D 5e since the Player's Handbook launched 5 years ago. It's gone through 3+ rounds of play testing in Unearthed Arcana, so there are actually 3 complete different iterations of the Artificer release through Unearthed Arcana as they were trying to jockey and change it. It always received kind of a lukewarm response in the community, and honestly, I believe that was probably... it had a presentation on Critical Role where Sam Riegel changed to a new character named Tyrion Darrison, who was an artificer in this like kind of playtest environment. It was the playtest version. And I always thought that was a weird idea. And by weird, I mean terrible idea. It seemed like a very thinly veiled positioning play by Wizards. Like they kind of convinced them to say, hey, why don't you try this class on your show for a little bit? And this was in the early stages of Unearthed Arcana as well. I think it was a little known commodity. But I think part of why it failed is because it necessitated the temporary removal of Regal's beloved Scanlan Shorthalt character. And I loved Scanlan. I loved Sam in it. That was Sam, and he's shown as that character. But when they had to bring in this Artificer, I think it was, and I say had because you will never convince me that there wasn't a third-party decision-making power at play there. It took Scanlan out of the show, and I don't think a lot of people were big fans of that. So by proxy, I think some of that shade was transferred to the Artificer class. Not only that, though, it didn't really make sense in the grand scheme of the world at the time. So Wizards finally landed on the techno-arcanist approach to the Artificer, and that synced perfectly with the timing of the Eberron setting because Eberron is built in that magic-fueled, technology-based platform. So an Artificer, and the way they wanted to build Artificer out as like a techno-mage, really lends well into this setting. So I think it is the right time, and I think it will have and has had a much better reception in this iteration or release. And of course, it had tons of play testing, so they were able to refine and bring in the mechanics more in line with what we see in the game world right now. So they finally landed on that for Artificer, synced perfectly with the launch of Eberron Rising Rising from the Last War. So perhaps it was just a little bit ahead of its time and maybe ill-placed in the traditional fantasy trope, the regular mix of fantasy tropes for the Forgotten Realms heavy D&D 5e at the current iteration. So that's my preamble around it. Let's talk mechanically about how the class works and what you can expect. So right out of the gate, it starts with a D8 hit die. It enjoys light to medium armor. It can use shields and simple weapons out of the gate. They start with Thieves' Tools and Tinker's Tools, and they gain access to more Artisan's tools later through features and abilities. Saving throw proficiencies include Constitution and Intelligence, so those are your save proficiencies as an artificer. Their spell casting mechanics called Magical Tinkering, so it brings in the industrious innovation of the class to cantrip-like effects. So it has these abilities around magical tinkering that are very cantrip-like mechanically and produce a variety of spell-like effects as cantrips do. They have the hybrid caster progression, so they progress in spell knowledge and spell slot availability like rangers and eldritch knights, druids. So that's the path they follow for spell progression, and they get new spells on the same table as those hybrid caster classes. They draw spells from the wizard, and they get some cleric spell lists depending on subclasses. We'll get into that in a bit, but wizard spells are their core library. At second level, they gain an ability called Infuse Item, so that you can choose from a few dozen, or rather 10, spell infusions that come available to you throughout leveling. At least you gain more items and more the ability to infuse more items. But there are 10 core infusions, so these are kind of like eldritch invocations, I guess. They're available specifically to your class, and they all produce different types of effects, and you can choose when and what items you infuse with this ability. At third level, like most classes, you gain access to your subclass. For the Artificer, they're called Artificer Specialists, and there are 3 core options. Like we said, these 3 are only available in the Eberron Rising from the Last War compendium. Those are the Alchemist, the Artillerist, and the Battlesmith. So the Alchemist focuses on specific spell expansions. They create potions and experiential or experimental effects in elixirs and suspensions, and they tend to be fairly healer-centric. So the Alchemist is kind of like your hybrid healer, potion-based subclass. The Artillerist gets a feature called Eldritch Cannon, so they create projectile-based blast effects. They have an arcane firearm, so very range, very... This is like that arcane technology infusion we talked about, and it's a great marriage of arcane and tech in a ranged projectile-based fighter archetype. And then the third and final is the Battlesmith, which is an arcane infused fighter as well, but it's a pet-based class. So you get a companion construct that can either be bipedal or quadrupedal, so 2 legs or 4 legs, in case you need me to clarify that. So yeah, under the Battlesmith subclass or Artificer Specialist, you get the pet-based, it's companion construct. So you do have like your pet robot. It's very tanky, so it tends to be a tanking-based pet, and an explosive damage fighter. So a lot of really bursty kind of front-end damage if you like to get in the mix, but also have like a pet that you can bring into battle with you. Very cool. I think that's cool. I will preface this by saying I'm a big fan of what I see in the Artificer. Actually, I would love to play one. I really love this class. I love the setup. I love the options. At points, there were times when I was going through, I'm like, this could be a little bit OP. But, we'll see. And it looks like a lot of fun. There's so much versatility. So if it's a world where it makes sense or there's a crossover in play there, I would definitely recommend looking at the Artificer class. I'm liking a lot. So as they progress in abilities beyond 3rd level, they get an effect or a feature called Right Tool for the Job. So it allows you to conjure any artisan tool for an hour. Kind of a cool little trick there. They gain ability score increases or feat score increases or feat increases. Sorry, they gain ability score increases or feature selections based on your choice, if your DM allows that variant rule, at the same pace as fighters do. So that's like 4th level, 8th level, 12th level, 16th, I think, and beyond. So that's how they get those the same attribute ability increases. They get a feature called Tool Expertise beyond that, which gives you expertise with any tool that you're proficient with, which increases your proficiency bonus when using that tool. So like weaponsmithing or creating other tools or elixirs, things like that. With Flash of Genius, you can add your intelligence modifier either to yourself or to a creature in 30 feet of you to an ability check or save that's being made by that creature. So it's a pretty good boost to be able to... add that in the moment, bit of a clutch play. Magic Item Adept. This is a very interesting system that is applicable only to artificers, and it actually affects the amount of magical items you're able to attune to and how they react to you. So with Magical Item Adept in the first tier, you're able to attune to a 4th magic item, and it actually makes the crafting of magic items easier and faster for you. So I won't go too much in depth of it, but it basically takes a quarter of the time it takes to create a magic item and half the cost of creating that magic item, which really lends to the class, right? They should be more geared towards creating and manufacturing magic items. So Magical Item Adept, the first iteration of that. Now, as you may know, you can only attune to 3 magic items that require attunement in the Rules of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So a lot of the more powerful magic items will require attunement. It's a way to balance the amount of magical items that a character can use or a creature can use. So you can only attune to 3 items, but the Artificer in the first tier of Magic Item Adept is able to attune to a 4th magic item. Keep that in mind because it comes into play later. Spell Storing is an ability that allows an Artificer to imbue a weapon with either a 1st or 2nd level artificer spell, and you can use that spell once it's imbued in that weapon twice times your intelligence modifier. So if your intelligence modifier is +3, you can use that infusion 6 times. Now think about it. If you have a sword and you imbue that sword with burning hands, then you can action that sword to use that spell 6 times before taking a long rest. You can change those infusions out. I think that's extremely cool. That excited me because you can take any item or weapon within the confines of the ability. There's a certain amount. There's a cap on how many you can do. But effectively gives that a spell effect, which is super cool. At least as long as it's either a 1st or 2nd level spell. But that's a huge library. And that got me really kind of pumped to play with this. So then you get Magic Item Savant, the second tier, which is gives you a 5th attunement slot. So now you can attune to 5 magic items, and the power is starting to escalate here. And you can attune any item regardless of class, race, or other restrictions. So some powerful magical items are usually restricted to cleric or restricted to orcs. You can use those weapons regardless of those restrictions in the second tier of Magic Item Savant. Very cool. The third and final tier of Magic Item becomes Magic Item Master, which gives you a 6th attunement slot. So keep in mind now you can attune to 6 magical weapons, twice as much as an average character. And that plays into your 20 cap ability, which is Soul of Artifice, which gives you a +1 to your saving throws for each attuned weapon. So that's where that comes into play. So you've got 6 attuned weapons. Now you've got a +6 to all your saving throws at level 20. In addition to that, you can withdraw an infusion from those weapons to drop to 1 hit point rather than 0. That's extremely powerful. And it gives you a lot of great survivability in the class too. So some really cool options all the way down there. So when we talk about the Artificer Infusions that play into this, like I said, there are 10 infusions. I won't go through all of them, but they provide a wide variety of bonus effects from AC bonuses, bonus to your modifiers, damage boosts, and ability bonuses as well. So there's a great menu so you can kind of customize how you're set up for the day, and I believe you change those on the long rest as well. So lots of really cool things to look forward to. I would love to get my hands on an Artificer to play through one, and maybe we'll play with building one of those in the downtime as well and share that experience on Twitter. So that is that's really the overview and the rundown on Artificer from Eberron. Hope you enjoyed, and if you are playing one, then let me know how it goes. Get at me on Twitter and tell me what your experience has been or is in playing the new officially released Artificer from Eberron in the Eberron Rising from the Last War compendium launched this week.